Strings represent a series of characters, and we've used strings several times already in the examples, but now let's look at them in a little more detail. So in JavaScript, you can define a string using either double quotes or single quotes. So I can say Joe in double quotes, or I can say Jane in single quotes. But the rule is, if you start a string with double quotes, you have to end it with double quotes. If you start it with single quotes, you have to end it with single quotes. Once you have a string, you can ask for its length. You can ask for the length of the variable name or of the string itself. So if I have a string and I ask for its length, in this case, it will say 6. When you have a number, you can convert it to a string. If you use the plus operator, and one of the values is a string, it no longer means addition, it means string concatenation. And so here it won't try to compute some sort of numeric value for ABC. It'll just glom the 3, the ABC, and the 5 together and give you 3 ABC5. And you can convert to things with a fixed precision. And so if I have a number like this and I want it of a fixed number of decimal places, I can use 2 fixed. Okay, a next feature of strings is they can be compared with the equals equals operator. This is a little different than in other programming languages, but it seems very natural. Equals equals says, do 2 strings look alike? It's not asking, what we'll see later when we get to objects with triple equals, are they the same object in memory? Doesn't matter whether they're the same object in memory. Equals equals just says, do the 2 strings look alike? Do they contain the same characters? We saw in the previous slide that you could turn a number into a string. Now you can do it the other way around. You can turn a string into a number. If you use the parse int function, int means integer whole number, then it will take whatever part of the string looks like a whole number and ignore the extraneous stuff, and the value in this case of I will be 37. If you use parse float, float meaning floating point number, decimal number with decimal points, it'll take the part of the string that looks like a floating point number and ignore the extraneous stuff, and in this case the value of the variable d will be 6.02. All right, strings have methods. Let me summarize them briefly and then switch over to Firebug and show some interactive examples. So you can look up a character at a certain index. You can find the index of some substring, either the first index or the last index. You can break a string down into smaller pieces. You can turn a string into lowercase. You can turn a string into uppercase. We'll give interactive examples of all of these shortly. Regular expressions are trickier, and so let's postpone the discussion of regular expressions for a few minutes and discuss them separately. And then there are some methods that I personally don't find very useful, but that will manipulate a string and wrap HTML tags around it. I find that if I'm building HTML, using the plus operator, just concatenate things together, is simpler and easier to understand. But nevertheless, these methods exist, and I want to show a few examples. Let's take the simple methods and the HTML methods and show a few examples of each of them interactively in Firebug. Okay, so I bring up any HTML file that I wrote in Firefox. I launch Firebug, and I make a string. var s equals, I can use single or double quotes, but whatever I start it with, if like double quotes, I should end it with. So this is a test. I started it with double quotes, so I should end it with double quotes. Let's make sure S is what we thought it was. S, this is a test. All right, let's try a few of the methods. Char at, find the character at a particular index. Well, the first one is entry 0, just like with arrays. So this should return a capital T, and in fact, it does. Char at 1 should return a lowercase h, the second character, and so forth. Index of, you pass in a character, and it finds the first entry that matches. So I can say s.index of lowercase I, and it says entry 2. Remember, it starts at 1, so the capital T entry 0, the lowercase h entry 1, the lowercase I entry 2. This returns the first lowercase I. What if I want the last lowercase I? I can say last index of. And note that with both index of and last index of, if it doesn't find a match, Q, there is no Q, it returns -1. I can make a substring. So find the s.substring starting at entry 1, ending at entry 4. And that returns his. H was entry 1, S was entry 4. It returns a substring. And notice it doesn't change the original string, just returns a new string that's a substring. So if I look at S, S is not his, S is this is a test. S.substring returned his, but it didn't modify S. That's true for lowercase also. If I convert it to lowercase, notice the capital L, capital C in the function names. Then it returns a new string that's all lowercase. But if I just look up S, it's still the original string. And if I produce a string in uppercase, and I look at the original string, it's still the same. Okay, and then finally I want to mention the HTML methods. I'm not a fan of those, and I don't personally use them. I think it's easier to just concatenate strings containing HTML tags together. We'll do that later when we get to Ajax. But some people may use them, and you might see them in your applications. Other people in your project might use them, so I want to briefly mention them. So I'm going to say .bold. That means wrap the string S in the HTML bold tags, and then wrap all of that in the italics tags, and I wrap all of that in the font color. But notice a little inconsistency here. The font color method has a lowercase c, whereas two uppercase, uppercase I, uppercase C. The version with two uppercase is standard. You use what's called camel case. Each additional word starts with an uppercase letter. This does not follow the convention, unfortunately. And so that produces this big, long HTML string. Again, I don't recommend that you use this, but you might see it, and so I wanted to briefly mention it. Okay, those are the simple methods. The regular expression methods are more complicated, and so I'm going to deal with those in the next section.